Everyone, and welcome to the Life Burst Podcast, a podcast where we talk about lots of Wixoss things, and we also do deck techs and mini videos, and maybe in the future other things. So maybe we're less of a podcast, but we do a podcast as well. You should subscribe and listen to our podcast. But if you're here for deck techs, boy oh howdy, do I got a good one for you. We've got Akino aggro, and I did too on this one. I did an Akino walls deck here as well. So these are two deck lists we're going to go over today. And we're going to talk about Akino from Changing Diva. And we're going to be adding her to our roster of sample deck lists. If you like sample deck lists and you want to watch the other sample deck lists, there's a playlist that you can watch all of our Changing Diva and prior meta deck lists, as well as all of our updates. For example, her Hirana. We're gonna update her. Actually, we already did it. The video is in the description. You guys can watch it in our playlists. But without any further ado, let's give Akino her 15 minutes of fame. Just introduced. Let's talk about her. What does she do in Wixoss? We've got Akino, Bound for Valor. That is the level 3 white center for no limit. It's gonna grow with 2 white enter. Again, it's team no limit. Its team constant ability is during your opponent's turn, Signy on your center Signy zone. Get plus 2,000 power. And then its enter ability, just like Hirana, is draw a card and enter charge 1. And the once a game action ability is down to level 2 LRIGs. You may discard a card with guard from your hand, and if you do it, you can return up to 2 Signy from your opponent's field to the owner's hands. Yes, that's right. Absolutely no requirements other than you have to discard a guard, and you have 2 level 2 LRIGs, which is, if this is an aggro deck, pretty easy to do. And you can no muss, no fuss, pop 2 lanes open. It's very powerful. However, discarding a guard is a serious constriction. If it was just discard any card, or discard a white card, for example, that would open up a lot more avenues. But specifically, you're going to need some guard mechanics with this in order to pull that off. But if you do, you have a very serious aggro, or at least aggressive push, to finish out the game ability. Doing 2 instances of Life Crush from the Signy zone specifically, not something that can be guarded, is pretty strong, especially if you time it to a way that your opponent doesn't have enter, so they can't react to it, or if you time it in a way that it's late game and you basically end the game. And that brings us to kind of a weird point about Akino. She has sort of a duality in her identity, and I don't know if that's necessarily good, just to be clear. But I want to make it known as to which route you can go down, and Akino kind of has 2 different avenues that she can do, and if she straddles both of them, I think she's worse for it. So I think you might want to pick a lane and go down it. She can be very aggressive. That action once a game ability is really freaking strong in terms of pushing last bits of damage. You know, in aggro we have a term called reach, and when you want to finish out the game and get the last bits of the damage on the opponent through some abnormal means, we call that reach. And this is, without a doubt, reach. But the problem is, its team constant ability argues a different route. The team constant ability says, whoa, I'd rather be defensive. I want to make it so that I put some walls out, and that way I'm defending my own self from being life bursted and life crushed. And I only want to use my end game action ability, right? Which is, again, aggressive because you're discarding a guard, aka giving up defense, as a way to be like, okay, I'm ready now to push in for damage. I'm swapping from being defensive to now going on the offensive. And I think that is probably what Akino does the best, but it's a little difficult because there's not a ton of support or critical mass of cards that allow you to go down that route. However, again, like I said, I've been criticized in the past before for being too critical on cards and not saying, like, well, this has playability. And I don't want to get too down on Akino. I think Akino, when I've playtested a fair amount of games with Akino at this point, can still win a fair margins of game. So if you want to stand for Akino, You absolutely can, and you can make it a good deck that is likely to win. You can tune it for your meta and have a good shot at winning with it. I do, however, want to start by saying I think that inevitably uh, you might be better off if you want to just win straight up, have more wins under your belt. Then Hirana might just be a better version of Akino in pretty much every way possible. But that doesn't say that Akino can't still win a fair amount of games on her own using her own ability. Now, she is a slightly slower aggro deck or a slightly more aggressive mid-range deck. So if you are in a meta which could value those things, for example, if you are infested with no limit, then Akino might be a good counter because it still can go aggressively fast. However, it might have enough defenses that it can pull up in order to basically get the last punch, the last laugh on these aggro decks. Otherwise, if you are being more of an aggressive mid-range strategy, maybe the decks are a lot more Madoka and Uchu focused, and they've really successfully walled your aggro no limit deck out. So instead, you need to go a slightly slower and slightly bigger, and then Akino can get you that type of deck. That's its niche if you want to be super successful with it, just to be clear with what you want to do. But let's get into the deck itself now. So, Akino has, again, like I said, either two routes that you can go. You can go aggressive, and you can go sort of a more walling approach. We're going to briefly go over the aggressive version. It's a lot like Hirana. So, realistically, if you've listened to the Hirana deck tech, you know exactly how this should perform. You're going to be trying to punch in very quickly. Your life burst should be focused mostly on getting rid of the opponent's Signy and then counter punching for some damage. As such, you're using the Trinity Red, which is a term not invented by me, but I like it a lot, and I'm using it. The Trinity Red being Ramel. You're going to use Lancelot, and you're going to use Deafening Inferno to help open up some amount of holes. You're also going to use Rose Quartz. And Rose Quartz is, again, one of the main reasons why you want to be in the team. It's very, very, very strong. It basically opens up a hole in any Signy slot whatsoever, which is unusual in red, but then also is able to find you guards later in the game. I'll pull up these as examples to show. Here's Rose Quartz. Again, it's a team ability where it's going to be able to basically vanish anything, and then when it attacks, you start to cycle away your cards, and try to find better cards that you need at the moment. Lancelot here, you're not using Hera at this point because you are not mono red, you're red-white. Again, Lancelot's just great. Vanish anything in a lane. You're going to use Ramel. Again, vanish any early game stuff, and Ramel gets better as the meta goes forward because powers of Signy go down and more text goes in the text box. That's usually how it goes in these card games. And then Deafening Inferno, since you are no limit, you can vanish anything 10,000 or less. So it's basically getting pretty much almost every option that you're going to want. Great. Perfect. You're going to see a lot of similarities. So instead of the Volcanic level 2 card, we're going to use Bow High Armed, which is more or less the same card. It's just white instead, and it bounces instead of vanishes. You can decide whether that's better or worse. I think bouncing is probably better. You're going to use more Archwains, for example, in this, which is good. Archwain's mainly going to be using its ability to find you guards in this type of deck. You're also going to be using Hanel, which is also going to help you find guards. And that's their primary function, is to help you find guards, so that way you can get yourself your last ability off. And it is difficult to get your last ability off, so you're going to want to try to go for one of those. And then you're going to use Zhao. It's sticky. It doesn't die very easily. That's its main goal, is to push some aggro early on. We've got some multicolored here, just two of, in order to try to get ourselves some more options for Enter. This deck is not necessarily Enter greedy, but you do need to be aware of how you're going into, like what Enter you're spending. You don't want to use all your white right away. You need to make sure that your red is available for Deafening Infernos later. So you don't, it's not enter greedy in terms of color, but it is something to be aware of. We're also going to be using this card, which is, you know, your normal Rise on top of a Frozen Signy, which is mainly what you're using the Rise ability to do, is to take over, to jump over Frozen or down things. You're also going to be using it to open up lanes. I have used Double Crush before in the past, and it's very good. If you need to bait out removal, you also can use the Double Crush and then just watch your opponent immediately try to remove it. It's better in the late game for sure. And then what are we using in terms of our team? Well, we're still going to use Go to the Top here, even though Xeno Cluster's out. I think Go to the Top is still pretty impressive at aggro decks. Using it in mid-range decks is now not necessarily what I want to do because of the Xeno Cluster. You're using it for the Enderburn, and occasionally you're going to try to find a guard and then discard the guard with its the ability here. Glory Grow, because again, Glory Grow just pushes that aggro damage like you need. And then, so here's the weird part. We start getting to Hirana and Rey. And the thing is, Hirana and Rey kind of step on each other's toes for what they do. Hirana on stage is great. Vanish a target level 2 or less Signy from your opponent's field. If you're an aggro deck, this is just awesome. It's going to get you your damage. Hell, if you're a mid-range deck, this is going to get you some life cloth damage, so it's good, right? And then it costs nothing too. And Hirana Power On only costs 1, gives you a veritable choices. You're going to vanish a Signy on your opponent's field every time, but you get the option of drawing 2 cards or charging 2. Now, drawing has become better now that Madoka is around, and you're going to be discarding more cards often. So doubling up on the drawing factors is not awful. And then charging for, you know, some of your like abilities to basically go with Hanel or go with Arcwane, or even, you know, supercharge for Double Crush later down the line is important and good. But Rey also exists, and Rey, Lunar Blossoms, draw a card, your opponent discards a card at random, and then Empty Blade lets you draw 2 cards, your opponent's going to discard 2 cards at random. Kind of steps on the territories, because I'm going to be honest with you, a lot of the times you prefer to draw cards rather than charge, because we're an aggro deck and we're getting late into the game now, and so it's got this weird thing where how many cards do you really need to draw? Is the answer really over a course of a game I need to draw 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 cards? And in Wixoss, not so much. Drawing cards is okay, but not utterly amazing like it is in some other card games. But you don't want to not use Rey, Lunar Blossom, and Rey, Empty Blade, because you need to grow pretty quickly for Akino's ability, because it does require 2 level 2 up to LRIGs. And you're also not using, for example, any Harmony stuff, because, again, you really want to finish the game with that. So you do need to go with more of this type of stuff. There is Rey Absolute Zero, but the cost of 3 enter is actually a little high. Yes, theoretically, Hirana Power On can kind of help you get there, but like you're also kind of wanting Glory Growing, which is not Glory Grow, to the top, which costs 3. So it's a little bit of a difficult. I'm not saying it's bad by any means, but it is certainly awkward is a thing to mention. But anyways, you're going to win games with this deck, just because the power of Go to the Top plus Glory Grow, and also Rey's just kind of messing around with the opponent's hands, and also the fact that you've got so much lane opening in the deck that you're still going to just win games straight off of those abilities, plus Akino bringing more lane opening available. So this deck will still do the aggro punch that you're looking for. If you want to go and lean more into what I think Akino is good at, but the card pool isn't necessarily supportive of, I have a spicier brew for you. I found that this one actually does still win games, pretty much equivalently the amount of games that I win with Akino aggro. So you can use what I call Akino walls. We've gotten rid of Go to the Top because we're slower now. We're replacing it with Xeno Cluster. But more or less everything else is staying the same. In this, just to make a point and to show differences, I've got Rey Absolute Zero. Whether or not you want to use Rey Empty Blade or Rey Absolute Zero, it's really up to you. I think Rey Absolute Zero is better in this deck now that we're not immediately trying to spend enter to go to the top. I think we have enough room, and that gives breathing room for Hirana Power On. I like it a little bit better. But then everything else in the LRIG deck remains the same. We're still using Arcwane to draw cards. We're still using Lancelot to open up rooms. We still are using Bow as some lane opening from the Life Burst ability. We still have Haniel to find us guards. The difference now is that we're adding a little bit more buff cards. So we have a little bit more, like, for example, Percival, which will help us get a little bit more Wally while simultaneously giving us better enter. We do play one blue card in the deck. Actually, two blue cards in the deck if you want to really be honest about it. Where is it? It's hiding. Saturn, natural Planet Queen. Now, it has two different effects. One is better than the other, and you might think that the better one is during your turn, level 1 Signy on your field cannot be vanished by your opponent's effects. And while that's cool, it's actually in, like, all of my games never been relevant and never shown up. But it's actually the base level of all level 2s and 3s, and your Signy and the Signy in your deck and your trash become level 1. Okay, so the cool thing with that is that means that you can hit anything off of Haniel, right? Haniel lets you get Signy level 2 or level 1 and put it into your hand. Since you're revealing a card from the top of your deck, it's technically a level 1 because Saturn's out, which lets you draw anything. That's pretty cool. But the real thing is you want to be playing Cassiopeia. Cassiopeia? Look, all right, I don't have Tiffany here to help me with the pronunciations or the names of stars, so I'm going to go with Cassiopeia, and I know it's wrong. And you're just going to say that its abilities are, when it attacks, you can reveal the top 4 cards of your deck. If there are 3 or more level 1 Signies among them, which if you have Saturn out, they are all level 1, then the Signy gets plus 3,000 power and Shadow Signy. Then you can put the revealed cards in your bottom of your deck in any order. You can also then, on the beginning of your main phase, you may pay white and colorless. If you do, you can return target Signy on your opponent's field to their owner's hand. So realistically, you are going to be able to gain the ability to make this live a full turn, which is pretty unusual in Wixoss by having Saturn out. You want this to live a full turn, and you also have a better chance to make it live the full turn if you put it in your center, because then it will be 14 power, and very few things can kill a 14k. And getting on attacks, by the way, Shadow Signy, means that you're protecting yourself from most life bursts as well when you're attacking with this, which is pretty cool. And then you've got an okay rate to return target Signies from the opponent's field to their own hands. But the cool thing is it happens at the beginning of your main phase, so you can work around that type of stink. I like it. I think it's slow. And this deck is slower, right? It is a mid-range deck, so it's not quite aggro. But if you do pull this combo off, it does feel quite powerful. You might be, if you know your Wixoss cards, asking, well, why aren't you running Libra if you're running Saturn? I don't think the Libra and Saturn combo is very good. Literally every time it's been played against me, I have won the games. Mostly because it's a very do-nothing combo. Like, it dirtles pretty hard. Draws you cards, which I guess is cool. But it's like, if you wanted to draw cards in this deck, you could run a copy of Trouble and some amount of blue, and you would probably do fine doing that as well. Plus, I don't think you need to draw very many cards when you've got lots of like stuff like Haniel and Arcwane happening in the background of this. But that's my reasoning for it. I actually don't like Saturn all that much. Cassiopeia at least can kind of stand on its own because it can kind of do its job, and it threatens to be like, hey, you need to remove me immediately. So it gets it can move the target mark to its head. But Saturn can't stand on its own. It's not a good card on its own. That's why it's a 2 of, right? It's better if you are like, yeah, I found a way to use this, and if you don't have the combo, you better just move forward. You would rather have a Cassiopeia stuck in your hand than a Saturn stuck in your hand, is what I'm trying to say. The last card is the God, how do I pronounce this one too? Your Yakiri. Yeah, let's go with that. Yakiri. Which is Harmony, like I said, is not super great, but you can time it. And this will allow you to basically, you're pretty much never going to get the when you guard, you get to draw a card. It's happened to me once, but not really often. But whenever this Signy attacks, you may pay 2. If you do, you can add a target Signy with guard from your trash to your hand, aka turn on your once a game ability at some point when to do the final punch with Akino. And that's exactly why it's in there. It's basically just an attacking Signy that can get you back a guard. So that's the deck. This is the more mid-range version of it. I think it's okay. I think it's too slow a little bit. I wish there was a little bit more support. I also wish that Akino didn't have that duality in its basically in its existence. But again, I think these are your 2 best options if you're trying to really go aggressive, or if you're really trying to rep Akino. I think there's a lot of potential in just being like, look, I am going to attack you as hard as possible, and you need to react to me or you die. And I think there's also some potential in saying, hey, I'm gonna put out some good stuff, and if you don't deal with my good stuff, it will kill you eventually. I think those are both the best routes to go when you don't have the most solid center LRIG possible. But again, Akino's once a game ability is stronger than Hirana's. I just want to be clear about that. It is stronger. It's just harder to pull off. But if you like decks that give more risk, more reward, Akino is way up your alley then. So with that in mind, guys, if you guys want to subscribe to get more Wixoss content, Tiffany and I put out content at least twice a week during release weeks. Clearly, we start putting out stuff almost once a day. So I hope to hear back from you guys. Please comment down below. Tell me how you guys have been liking changing Diva, what you've been testing, and how much you like Akino. Thanks, guys. We'll see you next time. And may you always flip a life burst.